Good, thank you. Raised to my challenge.
Yes, for the 5.
Wait, just quickly the mic.
For the 5
The values
that we were talking about earlier, do you necessarily have to have them all to start, or can you work on them and improve on them as you're going?
You don't ever have to have everything to start. And the fact of the matter is that you're always going to be working on them and improving on them. And I think that the reason for putting them out there is a guidepost to think about, what am I doing that might be encouraging these things, or what am I doing that is going to stifle these things? Because as you grow, and again, at your age and at my age, you're still changing and developing this capacity for change. And so if you look at those and say, you know what, I'm not really patient now, or I don't really ask a lot of questions or not as curious, that doesn't mean that you won't be an innovator. And it might, if this provokes you to say, hey, maybe I should ask more questions in class. Maybe I should think about the way I ask those questions, or maybe I should try some new things. When I was a kid, I didn't like to try new things, and I developed over the course of my career. I never thought I was someone who would take risks. And people who know me as an entrepreneur said, what do you mean you're not a risk taker? But I, as a personality, am actually not that much of a risk taker, but I developed the capacity to take intelligent risks. Question up there, then I'll go here.
Couple questions. First of all, how did you contribute to the early internet? What did the companies that you co-founded do? And how much did you know technically about what those companies did?
So my role, when I was doing my master's, I was part of, my advisor was Vint Cerf, who is known as the father of the internet, and we were developing the early protocols that are the underpinnings of the internet. I was the youngest, and the only girl, but the youngest of that team, and my job was to do a lot of the testing. And actually, I used to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go in the lab and do testing with the University of College in London to test whether or not the communication was going back and forth. So I learned a lot from that, but I was not the person at the top of that totem pole. I was the person at the bottom at that time. Actually, I tell a story about my 21st birthday, which that I spent that morning in the lab testing the internet and went to lunch. A bunch of friends took me to lunch. It was my 21st birthday, the first time I could legally have a glass of wine. And amongst those people was someone named Bob Metcalfe, who invented the Ethernet. And so it was a very interesting day, my 21st birthday, being involved in the different aspects of networking. My first company, Bridge Communications, was one of the early networking companies. It actually shipped the first router and one of the early Ethernet companies. Second company was about something called X terminals, which most people haven't heard of, thin clients and cloud computing in an earlier incarnation. Precept was video streaming. That was the company that Cisco bought. And let me not go, the 3 companies that Packet Design spun off get a little bit more technical, so I'll stop there. I actually was always deeply involved in the technology, even when I ran the company and was doing a lot of the outward-facing things. I personally was always very deeply involved in the strategy at a high level, as well as the technology strategy and architecture, even when it was way beyond the point at which I actually implemented anything. But I always understood at a very deep level what the products did.
First, thanks for the excellent comments. There are probably a lot of young adults here who are probably 7, 8 years away from college. So I was wondering if you could compare and contrast for them, engineering and innovation, which you've studied quite deeply, how it has changed in the past, say, 10 years, and how it might be different in the next 10 years.
Say that again? Put the mic a little bit down because it's getting fuzzy, yeah.
Engineering and education.
Right.
How it has changed in the past 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
and how it might be different 10 years from now when a lot of the kids here will be actually entering college.
Yeah, so I think it's changed in a lot of ways. I think the way it hasn't changed is that, again, an engineering education, in my mind, especially undergraduate, is about learning how to think critically, learning how to approach solving problems, and that's almost more important than the actual skill or discipline, and that's why I think it's such an incredible foundational undergraduate degree. So I don't think that has not changed, although I think there are some schools that get tempted to not focus as much on system thinking and critical thinking. Stanford is not one of them, but if you're looking at engineering schools, you want to make sure that whatever school you're looking at has a really good core program and doesn't focus too early, because those problem-solving skills and that critical thinking is really important. But the way I think it has changed is that the problems we have become much more interdisciplinary. It's not enough to just understand either one aspect of engineering or just engineering. And so engineering programs throughout the country, and certainly here at Stanford, have an incredibly strong focus at allowing students to mix engineering with either other sciences or non-sciences. So mixing engineering with design or engineering with social sciences or something. So I think probably the biggest shift is about the interdisciplinary nature of the education. And the message that I would send to everybody is that there is this stereotype of kind of engineer equals nerd. And nerd is not a bad word, but when I think of a nerd, I think of a person who would rather interact with machines than interact with people. And actually, I'm a technologist. I'm not a nerd. I prefer interacting with people than with machines, but I like to use technology to help solve people's problems. So those of you who are perhaps put off by engineering because you think either it doesn't apply to solving real problems or it doesn't involve people, that's just not true. It does. And you can choose aspects of engineering and be in the lab, and if that's what you want to do is interact with the science and the engineering alone, but it also is a tool that allows you to be cool and to interact with people in all sorts of different ways. So that stereotype, which I think has kept women and girls out of engineering for many, many years, is just not true. And it's a wonderful place for young men and women to make their careers.
Take one more question.
Sorry, I'm going to pick the kids over the...
What was the most crucial inspiration in your life that caused you to become what you are now?
Ooh. Why did I pick such a hard question? You know, I haven't a clue. I think there are people out there that can go back and say, this was the point at which I was inspired to take a path, and I went for that path. I'm one of those people that I think I was opportunistically, each step was inspired by something that made me take a different path. As I said, I never imagined I would write a book. Writing the book was one of the most painful experiences I've been through, one of the most wonderful experiences I've been through kind of after the fact. And so I think that I've been inspired by so many people that have touched my life, starting with my parents, and I have two sisters and Vint Cerf, and then I today present. Every time I present to a different audience, I'm inspired by you, and it impacts me to go do something differently. So I happen to be one of those people that I think my inspiration has come from the people around me, the teams that I have led, the people I have collaborated with, and there wasn't just one big inspiration. And I think actually that notion of something's going to happen and you're going to find your passion frustrates a lot of young adults these days, because if you get to be 21 and you haven't found your passion or you haven't decided to start a company, you think you're behind. And the fact of the matter is, again, Mark Zuckerberg is the anomaly, not the norm. And so you can aspire to do that, but the norm is that it takes a little longer to find that passion, and you have to try. And some people never find their passion in the workplace. There are some people that find their passion outside of the workplace, and they find a job. And they find a job and a career, and hopefully the two intersect, but there are some people that that's not true, and then they find their passion in the things they do outside of work. So again, you're lucky if you find the grand inspiration, but I think you should look around to take it from every place that you can.
Judy, thank you very much.